and I'll put them in a few later, just in case anyone comes in. I'm also putting some norms in the chat, but we would like to welcome Dr. Brenda Brown today, who's going to talk to us about LifeSource suicide prevention and trauma care. So thank you, Dr. Brown.
You're so welcome. I want to thank everyone for taking time just to be here with us today. My background is a career educator. I taught most of my career in Richland 1 and 2 for my fellow Richland folks out there. And even though I'm living in the low country, my heart is still with you. After retirement, quote unquote, I went back to school and got my PhD, and God continued to use me overseas, mostly working with teachers. You know, teachers are the same all over the world, and it has been a real joy to get to go through two groups, Consortium for Global Education and Cruise International School Project. And I have done many workshops with teachers around the world. About 2 years ago, in my husband's chaplaincy work, he took a training about suicide prevention. And he had some extended cousins who had committed suicide, and this was very near and dear to his heart. After he came home from that training, he said, "This is an area I think we need to try to help." And after a lot of thought and prayer, I went and took the training too. We've gotten trained in trauma care, and now we are sharing the seminars that I'm getting ready to share with you a little bit of information about here locally, in the States, and in places around the world. So this is a hard topic. It's a topic that is still not many people don't want to talk about. And it has been shoved under the table for so long. And so we're trying to bring it out on top of the table. We want people to talk about it. We want people to learn how to recognize the signs of someone who's struggling with trauma in their life and who's struggling with suicidal thoughts, because it's a society issue. And if we can learn some of the hints, and there usually are hints of someone who is struggling, then as a community, we can make a difference in this area. Many, many times, people who are considering suicide want someone to stop them. They're crying out for help. And so what I want to do is share with you a little bit about what we do. And then if you're interested, I want to ask you to please reach out to me on the documents that are uploaded in the chat room. You will find our information, and I will give you also our website, which has our contact information at the end of this presentation. What I'd like to do is go through our presentation, and then at the end, I'd love to open it up for questions and for thoughts from you, and to hear what you are hearing and experiencing in your neck of the woods. So this is, well, let me see if I can get this going here. There we go. One of the documents is just a general information about who we are. And it talks a little bit about the different kind of seminars that we do with our contact at the end of our page. We are connected to two groups, the Center for Global Strategies and also the Consortium for Global Education. And so they help coordinate things with us, and they help monitor what we do. One of our presentations is called The Cost of Caring, and this is my teacher heart. I have hurt for all the caregivers, but especially the teachers over the last few years, and the stress that teachers and caregivers have had to experience with all the changes going through the pandemic, switching to online, going back to class, switching to online, going back to class. And even now, even though many of our schools are open, the after effects that I know you are experiencing because of the trauma that our kids have gone through is affecting the children, it's affecting families, and it's affecting you. And so in this presentation, I just talk with teachers about that and how can they recognize the stress in their own lives. How can they try to process that in their own lives and reach out for a better solution? But also, how can they help their children process what the stresses are that they have experienced in the last few years? And so the cost of caring is about that kind of decision. And then another presentation that I give is helping your students deal with trauma. Over the last 2 years, I've really studied a lot and gone to a lot through training about trauma, because it has become, mental issues have become such an issue for our society, really. And my heart, once again, is with students and with our teachers. And so I talk about, how do you handle that in your classroom? And so this is an important session to try to help them deal with the emotional health concerns that their students are having. And because their students are having, then they are having. And then our third one is a suicide prevention training, where we give training on how to recognize the signs of someone who's struggling. And then what do you do? How do you reach out a hand of help and a hand of hope to get them connected to the right people that will help them? And what do you do in the middle of the crisis? How do you handle that as you're trying to help your friend or your family member or one of the children in your classes? You know, one of the things we say all the time is this is a society problem. This is not something that we can ignore anymore. And sadly, it's a worldwide problem. It's not just in America. It's something that is being struggled with all over the world. But we have also found that in many cases, choosing suicide or choosing to harm themselves can be preventable, but it takes a group working together. It takes us reaching out, and we try to give you ideas and processes to go through with someone who is struggling, so that you will know how to help them reach out that hand of help. You are well familiar, sadly, over the last few years, of some really significant people in the celebrity world that we have heard have struggled in this area. And I always say they had everything in the monetary sense, but they didn't have peace. And so just that recognition and that reality check that there are people who you think have it all, but they don't have the peace that they need. And sadly, we have also seen recently that there are many college students that are struggling also. We're going to talk about statistics in that area in just a minute. And these are some of the last few years that have struggled. Katie, the Stanford women's soccer star goalie's mom, has said, it just broke my heart that she chose a permanent solution to a temporary problem. And when I heard that, my mama heart just broke too. And I just imagined how they must feel and what they're struggling with. But that's one thing we want to try to help people realize. Don't choose a permanent solution to a temporary problem. We can help you get through that. So these are some of the things that we discuss about why, what you need to do with people. We need to remind them that it's okay to say, I'm not okay. You know, sometimes in the news, we'll hear people say, check on your friends, make sure they're okay. But I like to take it a step further, because you know how we are. And it's easy to say, how you doing? And we go, oh, we're fine. When really inside we are struggling, our hearts are broken, but it's easy to say we're fine. But when it's someone we know, and we know that something's not quite right, don't take that answer. Really stop and be with them and talk to them and try to get them to be honest with you. But it's important that we tell our kids in our classrooms that it's okay to say, I'm not okay. And then we talk about, what do you do next? And the other thought is, you know, we go to the doctor when we break a bone. We go to the doctor when something's hurt. And we need to be sure that everybody in our lives understand that it's okay to go to a counselor. It's okay to talk to someone when you're struggling. And then the other thing is what we've already talked about, that please don't choose a permanent solution to a temporary problem. Here's some recent quotes that I like to share with people. COVID area teens are revealing signs of trauma after 2 years of fear and isolation. This was the longest pause button ever pushed, a purgatory that teenagers used to think only existed in dystopian films. And you think about that. It was a pause button for these kids. They paused getting to go to games. They paused getting to have proms. They paused getting to participate in sports. They paused getting to see their friends. They paused in those kind of interactions that made them feel like they had a life. And I think that's why we're seeing them struggle so much right now. The other one, they said that now they are saying the biggest impact of the pandemic was on our mental health of our kids. And I believe that too. I believe the social isolation played a huge role in our kids' lives. And those are the things you're seeing the after effects of in your classrooms today. The current state of children and adolescent mental health is a national emergency. That's what the doctors and the psychiatrists are saying, that this is truly an emergency like we've never seen before in our mental health issues. More than 1 in 3 adolescents feel hopeless, sad, and depressed. 1 in 3 reported using drugs and alcohol during the pandemic. The pandemic isolated abused children and youth away from teachers and schools trained to spot warning signs. Early reporting shows an increase in children and adolescent deaths due to abuse. That's where I have been so concerned, because as a teacher, I know that we go through the training that helps us to spot those signs, and I've been there myself. And I've worried about those kids that we all know live in abusive homes. And so I think this is going to become even stronger. Here are some troubling facts, and these are all documented. 1 out of 20 people have had suicidal thoughts. We have almost 20 people on our video right now. And so that just brings it down to that realization that this is not just out there. This is something that happens right here where you are, right in your area, right in your community, right in your churches, right in your homes, right in your classrooms. In 2020, approximately 46,000 people died by suicide in the United States. 46,000. Approximately 800,000 died by suicide in the world. Like I said, this is not just a United States problem. This is a world problem. And it's the 3rd leading cause of death among 10 to 24-year-olds. That changes. Sometimes it gets even more. Suicide awareness is being sensitive to the clues that someone may be having thoughts of suicide. We use the word clues as an acronym for communication, listening, understanding, engage, and seeking help. When we give our seminar on suicide awareness, we go through each one of those steps. We have videos that we share. It's very interactive. The point is, we want you to recognize how each one of these steps is so important in helping someone who's struggling. And so that's how we present those kind of ideas. Now, here are some of the signs of trauma. I know a lot of people ask me about this. You might hear them verbally saying things like, it doesn't matter, nobody cares, nobody would notice, or it'd be better if I'd never been born. Sometimes you hear them say, I'm just a burden, I don't even need to be here. Emotionally, you might see them being hopeless or talking about feeling trapped. You might see abusive statements being made. You might see self-isolation, where they don't want to talk, they don't want to be with anybody, they don't want to go out, they just stay in their room all the time. You might see sadness and depression or crying. Those are the kind of emotional signs that should make your heart trigger that something's not right. And then physically, sometimes it's a sense of abusive situations or aggressive situations. Sometimes, as I'm sure many of you know, they begin cutting themselves and harming themselves in some way. Sometimes you'll see something change in their lives, like out of the ordinary, that just doesn't seem quite like them. Sometimes you see it in how they present themselves, that someone who used to always take care of themselves and proud of their appearance all of a sudden doesn't care anymore and looks like they just crawled out of the bed. and that don't ever fix their hair. It just, you can tell that something's not right. Sometimes it's recklessness, doing things that they know could possibly end up harming themselves or causing a wreck. Sometimes it's not eating or sleeping or threatening to do something. So these are the signs that you need to be aware that something's not quite right. These are some of the risk factors that our kids and friends might be going through. Drug and alcohol abuse. If someone has a major illness, sometimes they reach that point where they just don't want to live anymore. Lethal weapons, and talking about them, parading them, talking about using them. A history of trauma. If they've had trauma or suicidal attempts in the past, that should be a red flag for you, a warning sign. Sometimes if they don't have support at home, they don't have support at friends, there's bullying going on, something that would make them socially isolated. Look for those factors. Reliance on social media. Oh my goodness, we have had so many situations where social media has been a cause of or a link to what has happened in some people's lives, and trying to help our friends and especially teenagers realize that's not the real world. And to put that away and to put that down is hard, but that does play a role. Lack of family support or friends who have suicided. If they become impulsive all of a sudden or shown signs of aggression or are in an abusive situation. Those are some of the things that as an educator or as a counselor or a family friend that you need to be aware of could cause someone to reach that level of despair. The S in clues, we talk about seeking help. Now, and in our presentation, we also give training and ideas of how to help be there for them until the help is reached. But I love and so thankful that we now have a 988 number for our National Suicide Hotline and the 988 chat number. And these are monitored all the time. You may have seen recently on WIS that we do have a call center right in South Carolina, and they're trying to get one down in the Charleston area now. The present one is in the Greenville area. Because we want, when someone calls that 988 number, we want them to be able to reach someone locally if possible. But it is monitored constantly. And if a local South Carolinian cannot pick up the phone, then there's someone in the country of the United States who will pick up the phone so that they can have someone to talk to and then immediately. And then we give these other numbers also. Wherever we present, we always try to find the local numbers to share as well as the national numbers. One of the things that we've realized as we've been giving these workshops, and we give them in churches, we give them in schools, we give them in community centers, we give them wherever a door opens. But one of the things we've realized is that so many times it's a lack of hope and a lack of love that is fueling the emotional deficits that many of these people that are struggling in mental health issues are feeling. And so we talk about that. We talk about how can you as a friend, how can you as an educator reach out and share that kind of hope and that kind of safe place. We talk about how we want to have safe spaces. And I know you've heard that term before, but we give you ideas of how you can provide that safe place in your classroom and how you can provide that safe place for your friend. But we also give you ideas of sharing, how you can share hope and how you can share love. Some of the quotes that I always have used in the past that I love, Desmond Tutu, hope is being able to see there is a light despite all the darkness. So these people that have struggled and been through hard times, and if you can talk about, especially the background of some of the people that you're going to be sharing these kind of information, these kind of messages from, to help our students, to help our friends see that you can walk through a hard time and get to the other side. And that's what we want to do. That goes back to, don't choose a permanent solution to a temporary problem. We want to help our students and help our friends recognize that you can walk through this hard time. I'll be there for you. I'll hold your hand. We'll get through it together. And then when you get to the other side, you will go back and look and see how you made it through. Or Christopher Reeves, many of you know his story of becoming crippled after being like Superman. And he said, once you choose hope, anything is possible. And so that's an important thing that we need to be sure that we share with people. If you choose hope, anything is possible. The important thing there is choosing hope and helping people realize they can do that. Anne Frank, I love her story back in World War II. I don't think of all the misery, but of the beauty that still remains. So getting our focus on what's good still in the midst of our hard time. What's the good that we can see in our lives? What's the thing we can latch on that we're thankful for? Who are the people in our lives that we're thankful for? So seeing the beauty that's in our lives, even when we're struggling. And then from a biblical perspective, those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength, Isaiah 40:31. So giving them that to hold on to, those kind of thoughts and that kind of scripture will sometimes help in these kind of hard times. And then we talk about, how do you find hope? How can we encourage these people that are struggling to find hope? Sometimes we start with just saying, encourage them to take a deep breath. Let me encourage you now. Let's all just take one good deep breath. It's amazing how even doing that and just sitting and being quiet for just a minute will help. So even encouraging your friend who's in the midst of a crisis, or your student who's in the midst of a panic session, anxiety, to stop and be still and to take a deep breath. And then I always encourage them to think of one thing that you can be thankful for. I have a sign in our house that says there is always, always, always something you can be thankful for. And so I like to encourage someone who's struggling. I want you to tell me one thing that you can be thankful for. And just give them time to sit there and think, and encourage them to come up with that one thing. And then I always like to encourage them to give themselves grace. You know, we all need grace. And sometimes we need to quit beating ourselves up and just to give ourselves grace. It's okay. It's okay that you're struggling. It's okay. But look what you're doing. You're talking with me about it. Let's talk some more. Let's figure this out together. Give yourself grace. And then I like to encourage them to quit listening to bad news. You know, you can get depressed sometimes just listening to the news. And so I always try to encourage my friends who are struggling, just kind of stop listening to the bad news for a little while. Just take a break, take a half a day, take an hour, take a day, and just focus on the good in your life and the thankfulness in your life. And then I encourage them to talk to people who have a positive attitude, not a negative attitude. And that's really key. When you're someone who's struggling, you need to be around someone who has a positive attitude. Thankfulness is a celebration that invites hope. And that's one thing I like to believe, that thankfulness invites hope. You can find hope by taking next steps. And that's another thing that I encourage people who are struggling to do. Let's think about next steps. What's the next thing you can do? Because someone who's struggling is having a hard time just putting one foot in front of the other. And so I like to ask them, let's set one goal for today. What's one thing you would like to get done today? Because sometimes they're struggling because they have so much on their plate and they feel like they're carrying a load that is so heavy. And so I like to encourage them, let's think of one thing you can do today. And then I like to encourage them, let's do something for someone else. Who's someone that you would like to bless today? And it can be something as simple as picking some wildflowers and taking to them. But trying to help this person who's struggling to think of someone else can sometimes change their mindset off of themselves and help them to be thoughtful of someone else. And I encourage them, let's do something fun today. What's something fun that you would like to do that would make you feel better? And then I try to get them to talk about sometime in their past when they had a hard thing going on in their lives, and to look back and see how they came through it, and to know that they can do it again. That encouragement means a lot to people. And that's the kind of friend or the kind of teacher that you can be. And then just to complete some simple tasks. Sometimes it just feels good to be able to put a check mark on that list, doesn't it? And so encouraging our people to try to do the next thing and to complete it. So we like to say vision and change collaborate to restore hope, because hope is one thing that our friends who are struggling needs. The other thing they need is love. I had a friend recently in the last year who went through about 3 months of deep anxiousness, claustrophobia, just felt like he needed to pull himself away from everybody, which was very rare for him. He's very much an extrovert. And so he really struggled for about 3 months. He's on the other side now. And just recently we got an email from him, and he had taken the scripture in 1 Corinthians 13 that we often share as the love chapter. And he had kind of given his own perspective on love through that. And I just wanted to share that with you, because this is something I'm going to be using with people in our counseling and talking times. Love is patient. And this was his take. It gives repentance time to catch its breath, come to its senses, and start the journey home. Love is kind. It doesn't beat up the one in need of forgiveness. Love doesn't demand its own way. It doesn't set arbitrary conditions and rules to be met before forgiveness is given. Love isn't haughty. It doesn't demand respect or require the guilty party to grovel in humiliation in order to be forgiven. Love endures all things. It doesn't rush the process or short circuit the depth to which repentance must go for forgiveness to do its full work. Love rejoices with the truth. It shares a contrite heart with the prodigal coming down the road. And love doesn't insist on its own way. It's humble, and it understands that there is more to each moment in the story than can be seen. I just felt like his thought process after going through this severe, anxious anxiety time in his life was so powerful, and a good reminder to us as those of us who are caregivers that love and helping our friends who are struggling feel love and feel hope is so very important. The last thing I want to share with you is this book. I don't know if you know it, but I absolutely love this book, The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse by Charlie Maxey. And it is it's full of pictures and wisdom between these 4 characters. And I'm going to share just a few with you, but I greatly encourage you to purchase this book and use it in your own lives. What is the bravest thing you've ever said? Asked the boy. Help, said the horse. Asking for help isn't giving up, said the horse. It's refusing to give up. Sometimes, said the horse. Sometimes what? Asked the boy. Sometimes just getting up and carrying on is brave and magnificent. When the big things feel out of control, focus on what you love right under your nose. Do you have any other advice? Asked the boy. Don't measure how valuable you are by the way you were treated, said the horse. Always remember you matter. You're important and you are loved, and you bring to this world things that no one else can. What do we do when our hearts hurt? Asked the boy. We wrap them with friendship, shared tears, and time until they wake hopeful and happy again. "I've realized why we're here," whispered the boy. "For cake?" asked the mole. "To love," said the boy. "And be loved," said the horse. These are the things that these simple pictures portray that are so important. We need to help our friends to know that they are here, that no one else is exactly like them, that there's a purpose in their lives for being here, and that they are loved, even when they're in a situation where they don't feel loved, that there are places in their world that they are loved. And so those are the things that we need to help them to realize and recognize. So those, I'd like to also, let me put in the chat, it's on the information, but our website is www.LifeSourceSuicidePrevention.org. And that is on our information sheet that you can download also. And the name of the book is The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse. By Charlie Patsy. Yes. But I'd love to hear from you. And if you've got any thoughts, if you've got, can unmute yourselves, if you have dealt with this or have any ideas that you can share, I'd love to hear from you.
Good afternoon. Excuse me. I'm Janice Putnam and I'm from Orangeburg. And I think most of us have had someone in our lives where or a lot of us have dealt with suicide. But I'm a parent liaison at an elementary school. And I was looking at various topics for parents. And I saw that September was Suicide Prevention Month. And I thought that would be a good topic. But working at elementary school level, I didn't know whether, and you don't want to say it happens more in the middle school than it does here or the high school, but are there any statistics? I see where the age range is age 10 to 20, age 10 to 24. So that would cover like the 5th grade. I was just wondering, are there any, I guess, statistics or concerns that show that with the pandemic and so forth, that the suicide has trickled down to our elementary students?
Yes, Janet, sadly, they're still gathering statistics. I don't know that there's an actual number out yet, but there have been many articles that have been written about this, the sadness of the fact that it has trickled down to elementary. And I think the more we can make our parents and our teachers aware of the signs to look for, the better chance we have to be able to reach these kids in their younger age to help them realize there are alternatives to their feelings and emotions other than hurting themselves.
Exactly. So, but it needs to be a concern just as if it's with any other grade levels. So awareness is still always a part of it.
It is.
Right.
It is. And I think that's one of the things the more we got into this, that's one of the things that we realized in our own lives that we just didn't know. It's like anything else. If you're not taught the signs to look for or the words that trigger trigger words for you that sometimes you just don't realize it. I'll give you an example. My husband, one cousin that he was close to that sadly took his own life, he had seen, he was probably in his 50s, and he'd been dealing with chronic pain. And when Dale would see him at church and he would say, I just can't get rid of this pain. I don't know what I'm going to do. He said, it just hurts all the time. And Dale would, say, I am so sorry, and I'm going to pray for you. And he would often stop and pray for him right then and there. But one day he just said, I've reached that point where I just don't think I can take it anymore. And that didn't trigger. This was before we were trained to realize that should have been a trigger sign to us. And Dale just said, oh, I just hate that you're having this trouble. I'm so sad, and prayed for him again. But 2 weeks later, he was gone. And so what we have found in doing these trainings, that often when we teach some of these thoughts to people, they can say, now I know what I'm listening for. You realize it when you hear it now. Thank you. And I see some things listed in our chat that'll be good resources too. Thank you to those of you who are putting something there. Any other thoughts?
Yeah, I recently did a presentation in a class that I'm taking for my master's degree, and I actually just listed that link there to the kidsdata.org because I was doing some research on that in my presentation, trying to use it to support the value of free play and recess in the elementary schools, which they seem to be sometimes sliding or not putting as much value towards. And free play and recess is a way of stress relief for children, and can help them to get through some of those traumatic experiences and the peer pressure and things that they're going through in that 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, and pre-pubescent time as well, which is a really difficult time for them. So it's a really valuable topic to me, and recognizing that they're in that link on kidsdata.org. I think it started age 5 to 14 in 2020, which of course was a horrible year altogether, but 601 suicides even at that young age. So I think there's definitely value to this topic, and it needs to be made, brought more aware even at that elementary age.
Thank you, Joy, for sharing that. You're so right. You're exactly right. I want to thank those of you who are in the trenches every day, who are the caregivers, who are trying to make a difference in our kids' lives. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Brown. We have all those documents in the chat. If for some reason you cannot find them, please let me know and I'll send them to you directly. Do we have any other questions? Just a ton of thanks in the chat. Everything that you have done and told us today has been amazing, and we much appreciate it.
Thank you so much for being with me. I appreciate it. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you, ladies. Thanks for your help.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Yes, thank you. Have a good day.